Alright guys, so back again. We have got chapter 15 next, which is going to be recruiting and selecting staff. Not a very long chapter, so we will go ahead and get right to it. So with this chapter, looking at recruitment and selection, couple of different things. This is a crucial and costly process. It does involve HR and nursing managers, and the position description is going to be very important to the recruitment process. Um, you want to list the skills, abilities, and knowledge that are required for the job. It's also going to include duties, responsibilities, tasks required, personal qualifications required, and possibly may look at some competency-based behaviors, which we will talk a little bit more about in just a minute. So for recruiting applicants, the best strategy is going to be to recruit by using the current employee reputation. So word of mouth, you want your current employees to be happy with where they work, and they will tell everyone about what an amazing place it is to work at. And really that's what brings people in. You also want to make sure that you create a positive work environment. So some strategy for recruiting includes where to look. This is going to be when you look at your geographic area, you want to stay within your same area. People want to typically live close to where they work. So it's important to kind of stay in your area. However, especially with nursing shortages, national searches are not necessarily uncommon. Concerning how to look, you are going to have general job search sites like Indeed.com, or you may have nurse-specific referral sites that you can use. You can also look at professional associations such as Sigma Theta Tau International or the American Nurses Association. You can also look at specialty organizations such as the American Organization of Perioperative Nurses. You can also do some advertising and definitely want to check out employee referrals. For when to look, this is kind of difficult. The plan, though, is that you look well in advance of any anticipated needs. Now, if you suddenly have a big turnover, obviously you haven't planned for that. That can be a little bit more difficult. And it can make the organization a little bit more desperate. But it really, really they suggest that you stay ahead of those issues. So how to sell the organization to potential recruits. This is also very, very important part of the strategy. So you have what are called the 4 P's of marketing. This is going to be the product or available position, the place, obviously the location, price, you're going to be looking at pay and benefits. And promotion, again, you're going to look at advertising and word of mouth. Cross-training is also an interesting strategy that brings people in. Basically, you offer potential employees benefits. Excuse me. You offer this cross-training to potential employees. So you train them, say, in ICU and PCU, and that is going to benefit the organization, and it can also increase the applicant pool because you may have some people that are really interested in having that experience. Now, for selecting candidates, you have the HR review process. So typically their resume, application, whatever it may be, is going to go through HR. HR is either going to throw them in the trash or decide, hey, these are some people that we want to look at. Reference checks are then going to be done. Preferably those are going to be done prior to an actual interview, because obviously if you have somebody that doesn't pass a background check or something of that nature, you don't want to have them have an interview. So then you have your managerial interviews where the manager is going to assess the applicant's competence and fit for the unit. And they can also answer any questions that the applicant may have about the unit. It's best for the manager to be involved in this process because HR may give some blanket statement to an applicant that has a question that may really not be appropriate. So it's really a good thing for the manager to be involved. And then you may also have peer interviews, which are good for assessing compatibility. So, principles for effective interviewing, you've got several. So, developing structured interview guidelines, this is very important. The book suggests using an interview guide, which is going to be a written document that has questions and certain things that you want to focus on. It also talks about behavioral interviewing or competency-based interviewing. This is going to be where the interviewer focuses on some past performance and behaviors of the applicant. For preparing for the interview, you want to prepare like it's any other business undertaking. You don't just want to show up on a whim without having reviewed the resume or knowing anything about the candidate. You really want to have time to look at the resume, go over it. You want to make sure you clear any discrepancies that they have maybe between qualifications listed and the job specifications. You want to identify specific questions that you can ask. You want to find some type of rapport builder, which is going to be basically you're looking for something that you have in common with the applicant that you can use at the beginning of the interview to break the ice. And you also want to look at areas that you need more information from the applicant. You also want to make sure that you're in a quiet, comfortable setting. Interestingly, your book says not to have a table or desk separating you from the applicant because this can be intimidating. I'm not really sure that I've ever gone to an interview where there wasn't someone across the desk from me, but I thought that was really interesting. So, opening the interview, you want to make sure that you arrive on time. Establish an open atmosphere. You want to use work sample questions. So in this scenario, how would you respond? Those are really important. For giving information, that's just what it sounds like. You're going to be answering any questions that the applicant may have of you. Closing the interview, you want to summarize the applicant's strengths and weaknesses, and you want to thank the applicant. Now, you also may want to involve staff in the process of interviewing. If you are to do this, it is very important to be successful that the staff have orientation to the interview process and that they also have time to prepare themselves for the interview. For interview reliability and validity, you have intra-rater and inter-rater reliability. So intra-rater reliability is going to be an agreement between two interviews of the same measure that are done by the same interviewer. That is typically fairly high. Then you have inter-rater reliability, which is going to be an agreement between two interviews of the same measure but conducted by several interviewers. Inter-rater reliability is typically rather low. And then concerning validity, this is going to be your ability to predict job performance. And again, that's going to be something that's very low. There are just too many variables that go into that. Making a hire decision, you want to look at education, experience, and licensure. You don't want to make any assumptions. And you want to consider references and letters of recommendation. However, they aren't really valid. So though they are very commonly used, they're not really valid because Really, if you ask somebody to write you a letter of recommendation, if they have something negative to say, they're probably just going to tell you they can't write you the letter. They're probably not going to agree to write you a letter of recommendation and then trash talk you in the letter of recommendation. Or they may have had valid issues in the past with you, but you know, they want to help you find another job or whatever, so they kind of soften it a little bit. So again, they're commonly used, but references and letters of recommendation are not really valid. Integrating the information, you want to weigh your qualities that are required for the position in order of importance. Then you want to compare the data across individuals that applied. For making an offer, you want to make sure, again, that their criminal background check is good and that they are able to pass a drug screen. Some legalities in hiring. There are several pages of information about this in your book. I did not get extremely super duper specific. You guys can look at this chapter if you would like to. It's at the very end of the chapter. But basically, there is legality in hiring. Discrimination and equal opportunity employment are very important. You have the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You have the Age Discrimination Act of 1967. And you have Title I of the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. All of those are going to try to prevent discrimination and ensure equal opportunity employment. They do impose considerable scrutiny on recruitment and selection activities. Basically, they prohibit the discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, or natural origin. BFOQ, that stands for bona fide occupational qualification. It allows discrimination if it can be shown to be an occupational qualification that is reasonably necessary. For instance, a woman playing a female part in a play, or a Sunday school teacher is required to be of a certain religion to get the job. But in order to have this bona fide occupational qualification, the organization is required to demonstrate that it is a business necessity, which means that the selection method that excludes a certain population is necessary for them in order to appropriately fill the position. Pre-employment questions, you guys may want to take a look at these. This is table 15-3 on pages 212 and 213. That is just some good information for you to look at. So that's it on this chapter, and we only got one more to go, and we will get it going.